Welcome back to the Nook, everybody. I'm your host, Camden.
And I'm Morgan.
And today we have a very special guest. We have the founder of TimberNook, Angela Hanscom.
Yes, we're so excited to be joined by CEO and founder Angela Hanscom. She holds a master's degree in occupational therapy and an undergraduate degree in kinesiology. She's also the author of the book Balanced and Barefoot: How Unrestricted Outdoor Play Makes for Strong, Competent, and Capable Children, which discusses the effects of restricted movement and lack of outdoor playtime on many areas of development in children. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. And before we get into the deep discussions of TimberNook, we're going to break it open with a little joke. What is a tree's least favorite season? Or month, I should say.
Fall?
Close. It's a month, not a season. I messed it up the first time. But a least favorite month.
Least favorite month. Oh my gosh.
She was close.
Is in the fall?
It is.
I actually have no idea. I'm going through all the months in my head.
September.
Oh, that's really funny.
Sure.
It was good. It was good.
Thank you.
Okay, should we jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Angie. We want to know what inspired you to create TimberNook. Like, where did that first idea come from?
Oh boy. So it wasn't really an idea. It was more of a series of events that happened in my life. And, you know, as an occupational therapist, I was working in all different settings. I worked in home health with preemies. I worked in schools. I worked in hospitals. But it wasn't until I was working in a therapy clinic that I started to really pay attention to what was happening with children. For instance, I remember having a little boy come in one time that didn't like wind in his face. And I remember thinking, how do I treat that in a clinic setting? Do I get a fan and blow the fan on the child? A lot of kids not wanting to come in, but didn't want to get their fingers dirty, didn't want glue on their fingers. But the number one issue we were starting to see was that kids were starting to become more and more clumsy at the time. And so I remember being in a workshop where the occupational therapist looked at us and said, kids are not rolling down the hills anymore. They're not spinning in circles. She's like, the number one thing you're going to have to treat is balance. And so I just started paying attention to some of the sensory issues. And then I had my second daughter, Charlotte, and I actually wanted to stay home with both girls and not work. I had no plans actually to go back to work anytime soon. But I ended up joining a mom's group because that was kind of the thing to do at the time. And I had a couple friends ask me, again, interesting questions. Like, why is my child spinning in circles all the time? You know, what's going on here? Another one said, my son is having trouble paying attention in preschool. You know, why is that? And, just interesting questions and thinking, preschool, isn't that play? Like, why are they supposed to be paying attention and sitting? And then my oldest, it was time for kindergarten, and she just turned 5. And I remember the teacher meeting with us ahead of time and saying, this is not kindergarten like you guys remember growing up. This will be more like first grade. She said, my husband's going to pre-cut everything at nighttime so we don't have to worry about cutting skills. If they can't tie their shoes, put elastic laces or Velcro on. 5 minutes for snack. And she said, but if that gets in the way of curriculum, they'll have to eat their snack while they do their paperwork. 15 minutes for recess. And she said, but if that, when it snows, it will be an indoor recess because we don't have time to change your children into their snow gear. So this whole theme of no time for developmental skills kept popping up. And as an occupational therapist that worked on developmental skills, this didn't sit right with me. So I knew I wanted to do something to help children. I wasn't quite sure yet until I also was starting to pay attention to the fact that there was not a lot of children playing outdoors. So we live on 12 acres of woods. That's where, TimberNook originated. And at the time, we would take a shortcut through the neighborhood to get to our property. And I remember just one day thinking, where are the kids? Why are there not kids biking to each other's home? Where are they? I grew up in Vermont, and I remember being out until the lights went off type thing. So I knew I wanted to get kids outdoors around that time. I thought it was in the form of nature classes until I ran a nature class, and I had a parent come up to me asking, can you tell me why the leaves change color? Tell my son why the leaves change color. And I was like, I have no idea why the leaves change color. And so I was trying to remember from my science classes in high school. And, and I was like, it gave me an opportunity to reflect on, what is my background? I'm not a teacher. I'm not an environmentalist or a naturalist. And really at the time, those were the professionals running nature programming. In fact, they still are running a lot of the nature programs. Yeah. And so I, over the years, what I've learned is, where is my place here? And really reflected on this. And what I've come to realize, as many occupational therapists do, is that play is the main occupation of children. Mm-hmm. And outdoor play is an incredibly meaningful one that's really at risk right now in ways that we never anticipated. And that's affecting development in all different interesting ways. So that was just the beginning of me thinking about doing something at the time to get kids outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so how would you, now that we've gone through all these steps of, how this progressed into TimberNook, how would you explain to somebody what TimberNook really is? Like somebody who's never heard of it before, how could we,
Yeah, so TimberNook really is a very authentic outdoor play experience. And we try to create it as real as possible for children. So they're very, we use the environment to inspire higher levels of play. For instance, we might do the story Three Little Pigs. And then out in the woods, we'll have bales of hay and sticks and bricks. And maybe there's wolf masks. And then after we read the story, we'll tell them, now you have the opportunity to create, your own Three Little Pig homes. And so then the children have hours to do so. And whether they create a Three Little Pig home or not is really their choice, because true play is a choice. Mm-hmm. And so they might create wolf clans and, howl on the rocks. I don't know. But, but the beautiful thing is they dive really deep into play. And that's where all the good stuff is being worked on, all the developmental skills, like, social emotional skills and communication and fine motor and gross motor.
Yep. That was Morgan and I's first TimberNook. That's where we first met, was the Three Little Pigs.
Yes, yes, that was a great curriculum.
Yeah, that was fun.
Why is it so important to have a long extended period of time when you're playing rather than those 15-minute recesses? What is it that changes?
Yes, great question. It's really important to have a longer play period for two reasons. One is, and I hear this from a lot of teachers, where they only have 20-minute recess sessions, is that when kids come back into recess, often they're more dysregulated, hyper, having a hard time paying attention. And the reason for that is if you're sitting for a good majority of the day, which we know they are, the most recent research I heard about is that kids in America are in chairs about 9 hours a day. So that's a lot of seat time. Mm-hmm. And so they're already feeling fidgety, and then you let them out. And what happens is their arousal level, activity levels up here, and then it goes up. So in 20 minutes, now they're up here. And so their teachers are having to dim the lights, play calming music to regulate them, and using time after their short recess to regulate them. So it takes a good 45 minutes to an hour for them to be regulated and ready to pay attention in the classroom. Mm-hmm. The other major thing that's going on is that kids it takes time to figure out, who am I going to play with? What am I going to play? And then to dive deep into that play scheme. And so in 20 minutes, you're figuring out, who am I going to play with? What am I going to play? And then the bell rings. Mm. We interviewed kids years ago about that, and they said, we're just getting to the good part, and then the bell rings.
Mm. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so frustrating. We'd be out at recess, and we'd just be starting to have fun, really get into it. And they'd call us in. We'd say, could we have some more time? No. So we go back inside, and that's the thing. You're like still in it. you're moving around, have all that energy, and then you're getting in trouble for not paying attention, tipping in your chair, whatever, you know. I mean, I was always tipping my chair, so
Yeah.
yeah. Still do sometimes, but now that I'm at TimberNook, I don't do it. And then kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier, why is it so important that not only to have that amount of play, but for it to be out in nature rather than in a gym or just out on a parking lot, you know?
Yeah. So nature is really the ultimate sensory experience. So when you think about being in a room versus being like on the beach or out in the woods, I often ask people like, what senses are engaged when you step outdoors?
Yeah.
And I always hear things like, well, you know, you feel the wind, you feel, smell different smells out there, bird sounds. Even just stepping outdoors, the ground is uneven.
Yeah.
So you're constantly challenging your balance. Whereas indoors, it's all level. So you have to think about it much. So when you step outdoors, multiple synapses are firing in the brain, and your chances for that organization are going to be higher.
Yeah.
Also, if you look in our OT books, the ideal state for sensory integration, that organization of the brain lays the foundation for learning, basically, is to be in a calm but alert state of mind. So even just looking at the colors outside, you'll see like greens and browns, blues, and those are very calming stimuli.
Yes.
You go for a massage and you hear, nature sounds. It's very calming. There's a reason why doctors say bring your babies outside. But you have to be alert, right? Because the ground is uneven. You have to pay attention. An animal might run by. So you're in this calm, alert state of mind. So we want to think about what percentage of time are children in an environment conducive to that organization, and then what percentage of time are they in an environment that could be dysregulating or disorganizing. And I often think about a lot of our classrooms where, there's a lot of posters on the walls that could be visually distracting to children. Also being in close proximity to other children in the classroom, that can be kind of disorganizing too. Whereas out in the woods, you'll often notice that they'll play away from each other, right? And get space. And that regulation of emotions and activity levels is going to be, there's a higher chance of that out there. Even the noise levels are different when you step indoors versus outside. And then lastly, like transitions, right? So in the school day, there's a lot of transitioning. Like every 45 minutes to an hour, you're switching. Yep. And often when kids have sensory issues, there's often, anxiety with that, and switching all the time. Transitions can be really hard and disorganizing.
Yep, I see it all the time as a teacher, especially with the really young kids. They have a lot of issues. Every time we transition, many of them will start crying, and they'll throw themselves on the ground and throw a temper tantrum. And so I see it all the time firsthand. And it's crazy. I remember when I was a freshman in high school, specifically in this math class, like you were saying earlier, like we want the ambiance of outside, right? So I remember every single time I was sitting in that class, I would have my head like this. I'd be looking out the window because the window was next to me. Yep, like the whole class. So yeah, it's definitely true. Like we desire to be outside.
I actually have a story from today. We had a field trip out at Timber Nook of a little boy that we've seen 3 times now. So some of our schools that do field trips come out monthly, and I've watched this little boy. They started coming out in the winter, and this little boy, the first time he came out, would get dysregulated every time he fell at Timber Nook. He would have a fit. He also he would fall on his back in the snow, and he was like, help me, and he wanted a teacher to do it. Yep. And what was interesting is every time he's come, he's gotten better. That's great. And today was really cool because he worked with another little boy to carry a ladder. And resilience was another thing. He didn't want to help clean up. He didn't want to move his body that much. And today he was working hard to bring a ladder all the way across the woods with a little boy that the teacher said he actually fights with in the classroom. Wow. And so she was to see him work with another child. And then he fell. So he fell and he was stuck almost in between the ladder. And I was like, it'll be interesting to see, if he has, a meltdown. But he didn't. He moved his body. He used a rock, pulled himself up, and turned around, picked up the ladder again, and kept going.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And then they propped the ladder up against the rock. And the teacher is like, I don't think he's going to be able to get up there. And I was like, well, let's see. And so he watched all the other kids get up on the big boulder. And then he without even thinking, he went up on the rock and looked down, and then he was a little unsteady, so he sat down. So he was able to know that it's probably safer if I sit.
Yep.
But he was up there for a long time because he knew he could do it. It was really neat for the teacher to see he was capable of doing that.
It's a big change in three trips. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
That's what can happen, even with. It doesn't have to be that you come every single week. Obviously, the more you come, the more benefit. But you see changes even in that short period of time in these kids.
Yeah.
So we talked about the importance of having a long period of time and having it be out in nature. But what is it specifically about it being child-led rather than adult-driven that makes that so important?
Yeah. So we actually, just to bring some context and stories to it, we talked about that a lot with the field trip out today. So day one, what happened is when it was cold, a lot of the kids would come seek constant adult reassurance. Help me, or can you do this for me? And then the second time they came, it was better. And then today, they were totally independent, figuring out their own, solving their own problems. So for instance, going back to that boy, he's up on the rock, and there's a bunch of kids up there, and there's a ladder, and there's probably too many children on this one boulder. But they were looking at each other, and what was interesting is one kid came forward like a leader and was like, there's too many kids up on this rock right now. So we need to figure out who's going to go down. And she's like, raise your hand if you've been up here a long time. So some of the kids confessed, and I couldn't hear what their resolution was, but they figured out a system where there was only a certain amount of kids on the rock at a time. And it was something that the teacher's like, oh my gosh, they just figured that out all by themselves. In the classroom, she's like, that doesn't happen. They're not solving their own problems. And she's like, so she was starting to question, are we doing too much for the children? What kind of environment are we creating? So I thought that was really interesting because, and I told them, I said, well, at TimberNook, think about what we're doing. We are asking you to not be too close to the play. Yeah. Because when you are too close, they are seeking constant adult reassurance. Is this okay? Can you do this for me? Or there's more tattling. But when we back up 10, 20 feet and reduce adult presence, we notice that the kids turn to each other to solve their own problems. And we set that expectation. So a lot of the times the kids, when they come up to the teacher is saying, let's see what you can do. And it's a very different mindset. The kids know at TimberNook, the adults are not going to do it for me. And they stop going to the adults and start solving their own problems.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the most, what some of the most important things you see that these kids have in different patterns that they have with kids who come to TimberNook more than once, or they come on a regular basis rather than just coming, once a month or once a year even. I'm curious to see what are those patterns that you see with those kids.
Yeah. So a bunch of things. One thing we notice is they become more capable on their feet. So there's a lot of falling sometimes when it's funny because we had an inner city school yesterday, a totally different one, and an inner city school today. And both schools are private Catholic schools that are on pavement. And so they're not used to any variability in the environment. And there's a lot of falling. But getting back up again, once they get used to it and realize I'm going to be okay. And then they get more over time. It takes longer though. I feel like sometimes it takes a good portion of half the year, or at least, for kids to really get more capable and practice. And we noticed that with our year-round programming that there's less falling. There's also more regulation. Like that was an example of that boy. That was less crying and less reliance on the adults to solve their problems. Yesterday was actually one of the most fascinating schools, because most of those kids are in apartments. Yeah. And some of them have never been in the woods to play. Wow. So they were really nervous. And it was really interesting because there's a rope swing out there, and there's like one rope structure way down over the hill. And then there's a building area with pallets and bricks and tires and all kinds of ladders. So it's pretty appealing for kids to play with that. And then there's also an area where we stage things to inspire play. So I'm trying to think of what we did yesterday. Oh, we did Rocks a Boxin'. So it's a classic, kids create their own societies type thing. So it was interesting. They made a line for the rope swing because I'm assuming part of that is because they're used to playground type play. Yeah. And so most of them went to the rope swing and created this big line. But we purposely only have that rope swing so that there's not too much playground play out there. We don't have like a bunch of playground equipment because we're trying to prevent that playground play. But what's interesting is one kid went over and grabbed a flag and was like, we're going to do a game called The Land. And so that inspired some other children to go off to the boulder, like area that's way back. Yeah. And so once they saw a couple of kids go back there, they started to spread out a little bit. It took a long time. No one touched the Home Depot or the building materials for 45 minutes. Wow. And then there was one point where a little boy looked around and he's like, where's the adults? Like he got really nervous. But then a little girl started building a fort. Said, just come build a fort with us. And it gave him purpose. But within 45 minutes, it was a very quick changeover. Yeah. They were all playing The Land. That's cool. That's awesome. And played really deep for the rest of the time. That's awesome. One other interesting thing that we saw was at recess, they said the teachers, they have a 30-minute, maybe a 45-minute recess because they were inspired by reading the book to extend it. But that the kids are getting bored in 35 minutes, asking to go in because they don't have a lot of play ideas. They don't just have a lot of practice because, again, apartments, they go recess, there's not a lot there. Parking lot, yeah, parking lot. And so they didn't, and that's what we saw is there was not a lot of ideas on how to play out there. But what was interesting is once they figured it out, no one said they were bored, and they were out there for 3 hours.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
This kind of goes into our Timber Nook tidbit for today, which is to ditch your shoes. Bare feet on natural surfaces are more beneficial than most people realize. The feet are packed with nerve endings that send constant feedback to the brain, and research shows that kids demonstrate improved balance and motor skills through regular barefoot play. Without the structure of a shoe, the small muscles in the feet and ankles are doing the work they are designed to do, building strength and stability over time. So this week, find any natural surface, grass, dirt, sand, whatever you got, and kick your shoes off. That was our tidbit for today. Okay. So one thing that Timber Nook, I think, is known for is the ability to allow the kids to take age-appropriate risk. And how would you define age-appropriate risk in the Timber Nook context? When we talk about it, how would you define it? What do we mean by that?
Yeah, I think maybe the term might be that I look through as like reasonable risk taking for that particular child, because each child could be completely different, even if they're the same age. So I would say the way that we kind of assess risk is watching children, that particular child, and watch them very closely to see like how they're maneuvering different situations. Like the giant boulders always makes adults nervous, right? Watching them.
Guilty.
But we've even had toddlers up there and be completely capable. And then we've had some toddlers that they're not quite ready for that. We've had older kids, like we've just talked about the example of the little boy who had to sit down. He was like, he's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So I think watching the child, are they assessing risk properly? So that boy, to me, was assessing his own risk he was doing a good job. Like, he sat down, he's like, I'm not quite ready. And for the most part, most children can assess risk and what they're ready for. So the time that we might go in is when they are not being mindful of other people in their environment. So they might be assessing their own body, but they're throwing something off the rock and there's other kids down there. And so that to me would be an unreasonable risk, and it becomes a hazard for another child. Or again, it's mostly with other children, like they're sliding down something and there's a kid right there and they're like going to, or building a fort and it's rickety and there's a kid going underneath that fort.
Yeah, and you touched upon it. I think it's so important, the difference between risk and hazard. And it's our job as TimberNook providers to make sure that there's no irrecoverable hazard that's in their environment, but to promote healthy, age-appropriate risk-taking, in which kids can kind of make a mistake, recalibrate, recover, and then that process, I talk about it all the time because it's so important to building so many of those vital skills that we talk about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and how would you go about helping parents and teachers and whoever become more comfortable with these kids learning to take these risks? Because I know a lot of caretakers have a problem watching kids learn this.
Yeah, it's a great example. So an example of when I'm such an example person, of a reasonable risk where it did feel a little risky. I got to be honest. It was like, I've been watching Timber Nook for 15 years and I was really paying attention. We had some kids playing on the rope swing and they decided to put a giant spool by the rope swing and climb on the spool, but we were watching them, and what was interesting is they were testing it ahead of time. So they would throw the rope and be like, okay, it misses the tree. And then what was interesting is there was a group of children, and they put one milk crate on top of the spool, and they had one person hold the milk crate, one person hold the rope, and then they had a tree spotter to spot the tree. And then they added another milk crate and they started climbing up that. And this would make probably most adults nervous. And then they tested it with just a rope first, and then they would go. They had the spotter. And they went 3 milk crates, 4 milk crates. They went all the way to 5 milk crates, but they still could reach it. They had someone holding it, and they would assess, the children would come, different kids and sizes, and would assess for them. And they ended up being totally capable.
Wow.
And it was to me, the benefits allowing that risk assessment is actually really important, because they're learning to manage their own risk. They're like, this, we have different things put in place. We're going to test this out, and they can also learn, okay, maybe I'm not quite ready for that. And so it is important to allow for that, because we are actually starting to see some kids come for different programming that have been so overprotected that they are taking unreasonable risks. For instance, we had some kids come this past winter that were launching themselves backwards off the rock. And I was like, and another boy last year that was going to jump off the rock, and he was going to jump into a stick fort, and it was 10, 20 feet up.
Oh my goodness.
And so for me, that did not feel like a reasonable risk. And so I went up, and I stopped him before he went down, because I was like, he's clearly going to get hurt if he. And so I'm like, do you think this is a wise decision? Look below you. And he's like, oh no, because he wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you might want to have the kids behind you pull you back up. So they ended up pulling him back up. And I remember asking, I know you had Zoe as a guest a couple months ago, and she's the researcher for Gene Ayers who brought, sensory integration to the forefront. And I remember asking her about this, like, why is it in the past just couple years? I mean, this is a newer thing that we're seeing. My book was 10 years ago. This is like in the past 1 or 2 years. Why is it that we're starting to see kids take unreasonable risks? Where in the past, like almost always kids could manage that. And she said, well, probably we're starting to overprotect children. And those kids have been not allowed to fall from a very early age and get back up and to get that internal sense of, evaluation.
Yeah. Kind of like what you were saying earlier with, if your kids can't tie their shoes, get Velcro or put, rubber bands around them. They go their whole life not thinking there's a worry in the world. And then when they get faced with something real like that, they think they're going to be fine. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and actually you said something once on the Nook about like, a child fell and she blamed you. And she's like, why did you let me fall?
Yeah. Why did you let me fall?
So she was almost turning to this external sense of risk protection and not using her internal and being like, it's your job to keep me safe.
Yeah, and it's the most frustrating thing as a teacher to watch because I'm a teacher, but I'm also a Timber Nooker. So when I see teachers doing that, I'm like, stop. Or if they're yelling at me for not doing enough, I'm like, it's fine. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we don't want them to rely on the adults to do it for them.
Exactly.
We want them to get in the car when they're 16 and have a good sense of risk
Exactly.
assessment.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what have you heard from children or families of children who have been to Timber Nook? We talked a little bit about the patterns that you were seeing, but does that generalize to other parts of their lives? Like, what are some stories that you've heard from parents of the impact that Timber Nook has made on kids' lives?
Yeah, so we don't always get to hear all the stories, which I think we should, reach out more to hear. But from what I hear is that kids start to want to go play out in nature more. So, for instance, I've heard over the years that kids might have woods behind them and never played in them before. And then they go to Timber Nook and they ask their mom, like, I want to play in the woods. And so, it sounds so simple, but, just the basics of playing out in nature is one. Also creativity, they'll start getting new, what we call play affordances. So different materials will have new possibilities for them. So they might go and grab containers and use that for creating a band, where they might have not thought of that before. So that creative play is another big one. The research that we just got from UNH was very eye-opening because some of those effects I never even thought about, but teachers were saying that they were more likely to take risks in the classroom after taking risks out in the outdoor classroom. So that's kind of neat. So risks academically, trying things that maybe made them feel uncomfortable before, getting out of their comfort zone, which is what they're essentially doing over and over again at Timber Nook, is they're testing their boundaries. They're like, what else can I do out here? And they encourage each other to do that.
Yeah.
It's a safe space for self-exploration, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
And we heard from Joelle that her sense of self that was built and contributed to by Timber Nook is something that carries her through many different settings and many different stages of life. And I think we could all benefit from that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you talked about the child with the he was crying and asking for help, and then his story with the ladder. But I want to hear your biggest success story at Timber Nook, the most heartwarming, best success story you have ever seen out of all your 15 years.
Oh my goodness. I feel like they're all so important, even the little things. But I mean, one that was almost miraculous, it was just crazy, was it's actually, we're doing hopefully a case study on this at some point. And we have permission to share his story. Can't say his name, but there was a little boy that came for TimberNook, it was around the time of COVID. So there was a lot of anxiety at that time. Kids wearing masks. Everyone was wearing masks outdoors, but even in some programming. But at TimberNook, we didn't need to worry about that because they were naturally socially distanced.
Yeah.
And so he went to... he had like some sort of motor tic. So when he got anxious, he would like have these motor tics. And when he came to TimberNook that week, it stopped. He stopped having motor tics, and it was just they didn't see it at all. They didn't see it at home or anything. It was completely stopped.
Wow.
Then he went back to school, and they were wearing masks. And even though he was outside, they still had masks, and the motor tics came back.
Wow.
Then he came back to TimberNook like a month later, went away again completely.
That's funny. Wow.
So that was really, so that tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
About mental health, anxiety.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good point with anxiety. I feel like what is the most common factor in anybody who suffers with severe anxiety? They're cooped up in their bed, scared to go outside. And that's what you need, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so they're just inside all the time, won't even go out to their car, won't even go out to get the mail. They just want to stay inside all the time. And that's the issue. You're, like we said earlier, with the kids catering to their weaknesses. When you don't go outside, when you don't do what your body needs, you're just going to keep covering yourself in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We actually had, I think it's Helen Dodd, who talked to our group. She actually did a research over COVID. And she said that every time there was a shutdown, there was an increase in anxiety in children. But when they were able to go out and play and do like that play that you can have those risks, she said that the anxiety went down. And she said the worst thing you can do for a child with anxiety is, let's say they're riding a bike and they fall off the bike, is to say, you don't have to get back on that bike. And she said they need that risky play to overcome fears. And to overcome that anxiety.
Because when your nervous system is always in the defense, if you have these anxiety feelings, then your body's always like thinking that there are things in your environment that are dangerous. And the only way to help with that is to continuously face those things in a way that it is that is intrinsically motivating. Kids process through play. So like that's the way. I mean, we heard from Morgan, the guest speaker from our TimberNook conference, that one thing that she learned was in other countries where there was a war going on, the children would reenact these war scenarios, and it was how they were processing through what was happening. So it's a way for kids to work through their feelings and to regulate their nervous system in a way that's intrinsically motivating.
Yeah. And it's not even only just for kids too. Adults need to do the same thing. If you do something and fail or get hurt or, you know, some accident happens, you need to go and do it again. And I always, there's just times where something happens to me and I don't want to do it again, but I force myself. I just go right back out and I do it again because it's that mental barrier that you need to break through, basically.
Yeah. And it's the balance between, you know, you don't want to overwhelm. You don't want to flood the nervous system. But that's why being in charge of it yourself and going at your own pace is so important, because you're not flooding your nervous system, but you're coaching it through and you're recalibrating what is safe and what's not. Yeah. So let's talk about the future. Where do you see TimberNook going? What is the big vision and your hopes and dreams that TimberNook will, what changes do you see TimberNook making in the greater scheme of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, man. So, you know, I'm always paying attention to what is happening in the present moment. And I can give some foretaste of what is coming, but I don't know, obviously, what's going to happen in the future, but based on where we've been and where we are in the present and little glimpses of what's happening, One thing I'm most excited about is that we're creating our own model and a visual framework that you're working on, Morgan, and you could probably speak to better than I can. But I love that we're working towards like something that we've always kind of known, but we're creating our own visual framework so that we can better understand and educate and advocate for this work in a deeper level, and showing and unveiling all the theories that go behind the program in TimberNook. That is very exciting to me because I think it's very timely. It's very needed right now, because TimberNook really is its own thing, and own method. What the other big thing that's happening is there's a huge desperate need in schools. I just think kids are really, really suffering. The amount of movement and play has been really essentially taken away, and parents are also really stressed, and teachers know this is needed, and so because of where we're positioned in our research and what we can do, I really think we can have a big effect in the schools. And so I do envision continuing to move in, and that's kind of where we're headed. There's so many schools, just our site alone, we've had over 1,000 kids in our woods, multiple field trips because they're really desperate at this point. And we can do something about it. So.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to parents or, future providers, teachers, anybody who are looking to get into this but don't know where to start?
Yeah, so just reach out and send us an email and set up a time. I think, there's so many resources now on our website and videos. Look at the research. Listen to testimonies. It's very powerful. When we had a group of 14 people train, and people are on fire when they leave, ready to shout it from the rooftops. So I think, and we're stronger together. There's many of us. That's one of our greatest strengths. A lot of other organizations are all in silos trying to recreate the wheel, do it on their own, but we have that unity and that community, like a force.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we're unique. TimberNook's own unique model is very different from, in social media, there's a ton of talk about nature-based play or nature-based programming, which may all be really great in and of itself, but TimberNook really is a unique philosophy and mission and model that is evidence informed, and that is the difference between maybe something that's just kind of it's play outside, but again can be really beneficial, but is not going to get the same outcomes as participating in the TimberNook model. So hopefully we'll be able to articulate that moving forward so that people can reference it and understand really what's happening on a developmental level for these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
there's a lot happening.
Yeah.
A lot happening. That's why when people come, they get so passionate. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I'm like, scream it from the rooftops because it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was great. We really loved hearing from you and hearing more of the backstory where we come from, basically, So we really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for all of your work.
Yes.
You're really making a difference, and we see it every day.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, and if you guys haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like, repost, follow, put it on your stories, shout it from rooftops, like Morgan said. And if you want to reach out to us, you can reach us at the Nook at TimberNook.com. And
remember to play.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Would you like to say our slogan for us?
What is it?
It's remember to play the Timber Nook way.
Okay. Remember to play the Timber Nook way.
Yay!
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.